Sapakaya ca dharmasya sarvadharma swarupine Sapakaya ca dharmasya sarvadharma swarupine Avatar Varishtaya Ramakrishna Te Namah Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityormamritangamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let us bow down to Sri Ramakrishna, the embodiment of all religions, the Supreme God incarnate. Let us pray to Him to lead us from unreal to the real, to lead us from the darkness of ignorance to the light of knowledge, to lead us from death to immortality. Today's topic, discipline of karma in spiritual life. It is very important to know in what manner we are conducting ourselves in this life, how we are engaged in our work continuously, if we know the technique of converting the work as a discipline, then you will certainly enjoy this life, and also you love to work without any hesitation, without stress and strain which ordinarily the work produces. If we connect our activity with the spiritual idea, then it becomes a source of joy. So, let us try to find out all the implications of the nature of work we are continuously engaged in. Life is nothing but a chain of never-ending work. There is none in this world who does no work. Day after day, we work. We work and work, but yet do not seem to reach anywhere. Working, working, working. The question remains, Tata kim? What next? No answer. Simply go on working. Because we are not able to get the answer in the way how we are working, we are not able to reach the goal by which we will be experiencing real peace and joy. Of course, our heart hungers for everlasting peace, everlasting security, everlasting happiness. Everyone wants to have this. And we work very hard for the attainment of this. But the fulfillment always seems to elude us. What is the cause of this typically human situation which has assumed the nature of a crisis in modern times? The answer is that every cultured man has higher non-biological needs called values. And work, or the way work is done, fails to satisfy these needs. There is an inborn aspiration in us to experience truth, to experience goodness and beauty. And we feel a creative energy and a creative urge to express these experiences in knowledge, love and art. Work can become meaningful only when it becomes a means for higher experience and an act of self-expression. Suppose you take the case of a factory worker. How does he work? He spends all his time fixing nuts and bolts on the assembly line, looks upon his work only as a means of earning money and leisure. His work is not really his, it is his master's. When he does work, he is alienated from himself and longs only for leisure to do something he likes, something which is an expression of his own creative urge, something by which he can reunite his own divided self. With a true artist or a great scientist engaged in research, they are also doing work, but the case is quite different. In their case, work is not only a means of livelihood, but also an expression of their higher creative urge. Work does not divide the self, and so such people need less leisure and creation. They love to work and they absorb in work. For them, work itself leads on to fulfillment. They are highly satisfied. Where there is fulfillment, there is joy, there is happiness. This problem of work and self-alienation assumes greater importance in spiritual life. Because we are talking on this forum always with spiritual orientation. We are here to discuss things which have direct bearing on our spiritual personality, how to improve ourselves spiritually. That is the main purpose of conducting service every Sunday. How to get into the spiritual channel. Spiritual life is a total response of the aspirant to the reality. And if a part of his life is cut off from the whole and is engaged in some activity which has no connection with the rest, his response cannot be total. The main struggle in spiritual life is to attain higher consciousness. This becomes fruitful only when the whole personality is thoroughly integrated and every effort is directly linked to the struggle for consciousness. It's only when one's physical and mental energies are harnessed and geared to the spiritual quest that the soul can batter down the obstacles and storm the citadels of higher consciousness. In other words, work, whatever be its nature, must become a spiritual discipline. Otherwise, it will become a drag on the soul and a drain on one's spiritual resources. Success in spiritual quest is to a large extent determined by one's ability to integrate work into it. So we must know the skill of doing the work. Yogaha karmasu kaushalam. Lord Krishna very clearly, directly has said how one should perform the work. Two ways are prescribed in Hinduism. One is pravritti marg, based on values, codes, rules, the path of dharma. The other one is called nivritti marg, that is the path of liberation. Work done in pravritti marg is just plain virtues. Karma, which is of two types. One is ishta, obligatory Vedic rituals, engaging oneself in performing various types of worship, connecting himself to the divine in some way or other. The second one is purtam, that is charitable acts, engaging oneself in charitable services, rendering voluntary services in the hospital, looking after the patients, taking care of them lovingly, attending on them, digging wells, helping the children to get education, so on and so forth. Both these two types, ishta and purta, of work are done with a definite motive. What is that motive? Attainment of celestial regions after death and a better life now and during the next birth. That is the goal, that is what set in Pravritti Marg. People generally carry on activities with the idea of getting higher life, getting into seven heavenly regions, and so on. There is no idea of liberation or getting himself freed from bondage. That idea is not there in the Pravritti Marg, ordinarily speaking. If a person really aspires for liberation, then he will be following the path of Nivritti. The work done in Nivritti Marg is without any selfish motive. And the work done without any selfish motive is called Karma Yoga. The ultimate goal of which is mukti or absolute freedom is obtained through this yoga of karma. This distinction between karma and karma yoga is the first important point to be noted in our study of work. Swami Vivekananda has pointed out in one of his teachings, all work is a struggle for freedom, but all karmas do not necessarily lead to it. All work is a struggle for freedom, but all karmas do not necessarily lead to it. Selflessness or detachment is a characteristic feature of not only karma yoga, but the whole of Nivritti Marg, which also includes Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. Every action leaves in the mind an impression called samskar. According to Swami Vivekananda, what is character? It is a sum total of all these impressions gathered. Development of good character is possible not by sitting idle, but by actively engaging oneself in noble work, in service and in charity. To rouse from tamas, inertia, tremendous rajas is essential. People should develop strength in order to do good deeds and develop pure character. You have to work for it. Unless you aspire for it, you won't get it. Development of character is not an end in itself. Good samskaras in the mind, what do? They guide the will along good channels. That way they come to our help. But spiritual life is the attainment of higher consciousness, which means transcending the level of ordinary mind. This is possible only if the will is freed from even good samskaras. A good character is useful to the spiritual aspirant as a foundation. But he should not stop with that. Unalterable good tendency of the mind should now lead one towards getting liberation. How I should get freedom? The real peace, the real joy lies in absolute freedom. The aim of Karma Yoga is not development of character or doing material good to the world. It is a spiritual discipline, and its goal is attained, that is, liberation is achieved by following the path of Karma Yoga. The first qualification for the practice of Karma Yoga is intense aspiration for liberation. Intense aspiration for liberation. Mumukshutvam. That's very important point. If you don't have that aspiration, your work cannot become Karma Yoga. Karma does not mean only the movement of muscles. Body and mind are integrally related, and every kind of voluntary activity involves the operation of mind. Mind is there everywhere. The mind is constantly influencing work. If the mind is there on your work, work is done properly. If the mind is not there on the work, work is done haphazardly. In the same way, it is reasonable to suppose that work too is influencing the mind. Working for one's work's sake, as Swami Vivekananda puts it in the Karma Yoga, it only means that work should be done without any selfish motives. That's the meaning of telling working for work's sake. When the aspirant reaches the state of Naishkarmya, that is worklessness, he will be free from all bondage and realizes his true nature. Another important point we should understand, there are two types of self. One is the Sakshi, witnessing self. That's called Sakshi, witnessing. I am witnessing everything. And the second is Karta, the agent, the doer. The witnessing self is a pure self-luminous Atman, which is really ever free and infinite. This true self, when covered or limited by the buddhi or the intellect, appears as the empirical self and becomes the agent for actions. Bondage applies only to this empirical self. According to Hinduism, Atman is immutable, and that change, movement, action belong not to the soul but to the mind and body, which are only modifications of Prakriti. So, karma is actually a function of Prakriti. The self, the Atman, appropriates that movement of Prakriti and considers itself the agent. The appropriation takes place through willing. That is Ichcha. It is the will that is bound. Behind every action, there is the will which supports it. Will and I consciousness are the active and passive aspects of the self. Will may be regarded as a focusing of consciousness, just as I consciousness in its true nature is pure and free, so also is will intrinsically free but is actually found enslaved by desires. Desires. Most of the karma done by us is prompted by this impure and enslaved will. Between the will and the action, desires intervene and change the nature of action. If our will is freed from the hold of desires, then all our actions will be supported and impelled by the pure will. So desires, the next question is desires. They are the sprouting of latent impressions left in the mind by earlier experiences. Every action or the experience that follows it produces two kinds of effect. One is the cosmic effect, which returns to the doer after some time as a karma phal, the result of what you have done. It is bound to come to you. The second effect, which is individual, is the production of a samskara, subliminal impression in the mind. Karma phal is irrevocable and unchangeable, whereas samskaras can be changed. Suppose a person does a wicked deed. This will produce a bad samskara in his mind and also a painful karma phal, the fruit of his action, the bitter fruit of his bad action. Through repentance, through prayer, through good conduct, the person can change the bad samskara in him, but he can by no means avert the painful karma phal which will visit him with unerring certainty. That's a very important point which we should all understand. In Yoga Sutra, Patanjali Maharshi, in one of his sutras, he says, Klesha Moolah Karmashayo Drishta Drishta Janma Vedaniyaha. Karmashya means the womb of karmas, actions and reactions, has its root in these obstacles, and the karmas bring experiences in the present, in the future births. Here, Patanjali explains what karma is, how it is stored, and how it functions. The Sanskrit word karma can mean two things: action and or the result of action. When you do karma, you reap karma. But generally, when we say karma, we are referring to the reactions to past actions. Every action will leave its result. Every cause will bear its effect. It's impossible to say which comes first. For example, how does a tree grow? You sow a seed, but where do you get the seed? From another tree. Which comes first? The tree or the seed? Which comes first? The chicken or the egg? It is impossible to find out. Likewise, it is impossible to know the origin of karma. No one knows where and how it started. But it is here. We see it, and we should try to put an end to it. That's our job now. So, no action goes without its reaction. And these don't go away but are stored. The receptacle for the karmas is called the karmashaya, or the womb of karmas. The karmas wait for an opportunity to come to the surface and bring their reactions. The kleshas, the obstacles, cause these karmas, which may bear fruit now or in a future life. In other words, they are seen or unseen, drishta, drishta. According to the number of karmas, we will have births. But there need not be a separate birth for every karma. Karmas may group together. One strong karma may call for a body, and all other similar karmas that can make us to experience in a particular way, to bring the reactions, they also come and join in. Let us take an example. There is a cab driver. He collects his passengers at the airport and bring them into the city instead of picking up just one person. First, a person hails the cab, and then a few others who want to go the same way will come in, and they drop out along the way to the city. But they all sit in the same cab. In the same way, one very strong and powerful karma will say, I must have a body. I have to express myself. When such a karma brings a new body and starts working through it, all the other karmas that can take advantage of that body join in. When that karma is over, then there will be many more waiting in line. Even your present body can be changed if you have an intense desire. If your mind is consumed with intense anger, for example, the whole face and body will change to express that emotion. If your present body cannot change enough to fulfill the purpose of a particular thought, the body will be disposed of and you will get a new one. Karmas are that powerful. Just imagine how many actions you perform, how many have brought forth reactions, and how many reactions must be pending. Good and bad actions bring either meritorious or demeritorious reactions. So, when you take a birth, you are not only enjoying the reactions to previous actions or purging karma, but you may be creating new karmas also. Then there are three kinds of karmas. Those being expressed and exhausted through this birth. That is called prarabdha karma. New karmas being created during this birth. That's agami karma. And those waiting in the karmashaya to be fulfilled in future births, they are called sanchita karma. So like this, the karma has been classified. Take the case of a bowman. He has a number of arrows in the quiver. A really expert bowman can take one arrow, fit it into the bow, aim and release it, and immediately take up a second arrow to fit. The arrows would then be in three different stages. One has already left the bow and is on its way. He has already released the arrow. You have no more say over it. You can neither stop it nor draw it back. This is like the prarabdha karma, which has caused this birth. You can't do anything about it. You can't undo about the body which you have already got. As long as the body stays, the karma allotted to it will continue. Even a person who has transcended his mind and realized the self still appears to be doing something, because the momentum created by his birth is still continuing. The second arrow, ready to be aimed, is like the new karma you create at each moment. You have full control over it. And the quiver represents karmashaya. If you want, you can aim the arrows from the quiver. Otherwise, you can take them out. It is in your hands. They are called the sanchita karmas. We control them, and the sanchita, but that means we have got full control over the two types of karmas, agami and sanchita, but we can't do anything about the prarabdha. We just have to accept it. So this cycle continues until self-realization comes. One has to pass through this struggling process. In the next sutra, Maharshi says, Satimule tadvipake jatyayur bhogaha. With the existence of the root, there will be fruits also. Namely, the births of different species of life, their lifespans and experiences. Here you might think about what species you may belong to in your next birth. You need not get a human body. If your thoughts are animalistic, the karmas may call for an animal's body. If someone is always cunning in this life, the reactions will bring forth more cunning actions, which might be better expressed through a fox's body. Or a person wants to eat excessively, might take a pig's body, so he can enjoy that more. But don't think that this contradicts the theory of evolution. The individual soul always continues to evolve, even though the individual may get various bodies which are evolved to a greater or lesser degree and which experience things through these different forms. He or she continues to progress. Remember that the body is not the experiencer. Life is experienced by the mind through the body. The body is only a vehicle for experience. It's only an instrument. When a flower is fragrant, It is not the nose that experiences the fragrance, but the mind through the nose. If the mind doesn't want to function through the nose because it is occupied elsewhere, it won't experience the fragrance, even if the flower is placed right up the nose. When we are concentrating on a book, we won't hear our friend even if he shouts to us. Not because our ears are closed, but because the mind is not connected to the ears at this point. So it is the mind that experiences and enjoys everything, not the organs of the body. So mind is the experiencer. Even in an animal's body, the mind experiences and undergoes things. And wherever we gain experience, we progress, we purge, and we eventually reach our destination. In our life's journey towards realization, each body is a different vehicle. A dog on the road may have once been a saint who by a small mistake got into that body. A fox may once have been a miserly, cunning business person. A scorpion might have been a big employer always stinging his employees. So we can't say they are merely animals. You can't say they are merely animals. Within each form lies a soul on its evolutionary path towards realization. The sutra also tells that the span of each life and experiences of pleasure and pain are determined by karma, which in turn is the fruit of the obstacles. Every experience also leaves in the mind a second type of samskara called vasana, which later gives rise to memory. This is another important point which we should know. A person who has conquered his smoking habit can remember his earlier experience without feeling the urge to smoke. This shows that the memory of an experience and the desire or impulse to repeat that experience are two different things. Usually, however, memory and impulse are intimately interconnected, and the arousal of one automatically leads to the arousal of the other. Karmashaya and vasanas are simultaneously recorded in the mind and are closely connected. But they represent two different functions of the mind, and this distinction is important. Memory is a kind of imagination in which names and mental pictures are formed. By itself, it's a harmless exercise. Not so are the impulses or desires. They produce bodily changes and drag the soul away to the objects of desire. And a person who has controlled the passions like hatred, fear, etc., the images connected with them may appear, but these images do not rouse the passions. There is no need to get alarmed when certain images appear in the mind. They are dangerous only if they are connected to wrong emotions. The connection between memories and impulses, between vasanas and karma bijas, is a sort of conditioned reflex made by the habit. But this connection can be broken through discrimination, through prayer and repeated effort. A large part of human suffering is caused by the wrong connections of various names and images to bad emotions made during early adolescence through evil company. The most important point to remember is that it's only desires or impulses produced by karmashai that bind the soul, and not the memories produced by vasanas. The will, which is a dynamic principle, gets connected only to the impulses or desires, and this is what binds the soul. It is the karma that produces desire. A person who has never smoked a cigar cannot have a desire for smoking. He can at best have only a curiosity for it. Since karmashaya is produced in the mind through karma, and the connection between it and the will is also usually produced through karma, these two effects can be destroyed through karma. It is through right action that one counteracts the bad effects of wrong actions. Karma rouses latent desires, and karma itself can destroy them. The effects of bad karma cannot be easily erased through the thinking process alone. Even if one partially succeeds in it, one has to test it in actual life through action. That's why Karma Yoga is regarded as an unavoidable discipline for the purification of the mind. Our life energy is constantly activating the samskaras, and as a result, desires and memories are constantly rising in our minds, though we notice only a few. Left to themselves, even the desires are not troublesome. It's only when the will goes and hooks the desires that they become our own. Then they become sankalpas, intentions. When the desires thus get connected to the soul, they become charged with consciousness, become living, and then start haunting us. But if the will is withdrawn through detachment, the desires get deflated, they become lifeless, and then disappear after remaining in the field of consciousness for a short time. For example, Diwali festival, there will be a lot of fireworks. The whole sky is full of so many fire bursts. If you go and stand on a terrace of a house, you can see hundreds of rockets, crackers, etc. going up and exploding all around you. But you remain unaffected. In the same way, a detached person feels desires rising and disappearing in him without giving him any trouble. So, what is detachment? Detachment means freedom from desires. The desires cannot be destroyed in the beginning. For destruction of the seeds of desire is possible only by the light of spiritual illumination. But for a beginner in spiritual life, what is important is to see that desires are not given physical expression, but are reduced to their latent subliminal seed state. If the desires arise, the will should be freed from them. This is the first freedom that an aspirant must acquire. And this is the primary purpose of Karma Yoga. When the will is detached from desires, then aspiration or yearning for God can turn inward. This inward going tendency of the will, freed from desires, is called pratyak pravanata, interiority of the mind. So mind should go inward to experience God. This is the first purpose of Karma Yoga, according to all Vedantic teachers. Just as the clouds produce rain and then disappear, so does karma disappear after producing pratyak pravanata. The freedom to turn within, the freedom to detach the will from desires, is, however, used by the karma yogi to perfect his work and render service to his fellow beings. In the case of karma yogi, interiorization of mind is aimed at projecting his inner powers outside for the welfare of the world. So in his case, spiritual effort moves in two directions. One is inward for the deepening and concentration of mental powers, and the second outward for the extension and deployment of these powers in social service. This double movement is an important characteristic of Karma Yoga, which distinguishes it from all other yogas. What is that power which draws the Karma Yogi outward and makes him take up the burden of others? It is the power of love. Not selfish love, but love freely given without expecting anything in return. Love is an inseparable aspect of Karma Yoga. Human love is usually regarded as an emotion which is harmful to spiritual progress. This misconception is a result of identifying it with desires and instincts. True love is neither an emotion nor a desire. It's a mysterious unifying power which is the very fabric of existence. It is indeed inseparable from life. It is the basic rhythm that pulsates through all creation. Infinite are its expressions. It is not personal. You do not create it, it creates you. Love cannot be manufactured. It's a mistake to think that love is a special creation of the individual or something to be newly acquired. It is a universal power which spontaneously bubbles up in all living beings. The main reason for failures in love is that many people are not mature enough to handle properly this natural power that is arising in them. From the point of view of a karma yogi, love is perhaps more meaningful as an expression of Sat existence. All life is one, and love is an expression of this unity of life and basic solidarity of creation. Karma Yoga is regulating one's activities in tune with the rhythm of universal love. The difference between a karma yogi and a worldly person who too does work lies in the way they manipulate love. In the first place, the worldly person has very little love in him because he obstructs the flow of universal love through him by hatred, jealousy, greed and other negative emotions. In the karma yogi, love flows like a river. Secondly, the worldly person tries to prevent whatever little love he has got from flowing out of him and reaching others, but he succeeds only in creating a whirlpool in himself. As a result, love for him becomes a source of conflict and torture. A third difference lies in the fact that the worldly person is unconscious of the power of the love. His love is instinctive and unenlightened. It's a reaction to the attitude of others. He is more or less a helpless victim of love. The true karma yogi, on the contrary, is fully conscious of the tremendous power of love and its other results, and the true karma yogi is its master, is its controller. Love flows from him to others in a regulated way, but in abundance. He doesn't try to bind others to himself, but helps and guides all people along their paths to the supreme goal. Thus, interiorization of mind through karma and the mature conscious unselfish regulation of the stream of love for the welfare of the world are the two important characteristics of karma yoga. Karma yoga is a spiritual discipline and is based on certain principles which are universally valid. The first principle is the naturalness of selfless work. The second fundamental principle of karma yoga is the law of yajna or sacrifice. The third fundamental principle on which karma yoga is based is that the effect of karma depends on the state of consciousness of the doer. It is not what we do that is important, but how we do it. How we do it. So, we have to understand karma yoga in this fashion. Then only it becomes a spiritual way to experience the real peace and joy. We have seen in the life of Sri Ramakrishna how he was a perfect karma yogi. At the same time, he was perfect in all other yogas. He had full control over what he was doing. And the basis of all his actions was nothing but love. Once people came to see him, they would love to come again and again on account of the attraction of love. They could feel that tremendous love transmitted to them when they met him. It is the tremendous love that transformed Narendranath into Vivekananda. Sri Ramakrishna came in this form from the absolute Brahman. He himself has said, Paramatman incarnates himself in order to guide the humanity, in order to lead the humanity, in order to rise the humanity out of his infinite compassion, out of his infinite love and kindness. God incarnates just to help the humanity, just to show them the right way, just to show them the correct path. So love is the guiding force of the life. So if we base all our actions on love, then it should be possible for us to experience real peace and real joy in this life. But one thing is very important. Whatever action we do, we have to have the effect of those actions. So it is very important what manner we are doing the actions, in what way we are doing. If we do it carefully, we can definitely reach the goal of peace and joy. With these words, I conclude my talk. Thank you. This year, our annual children's camp for children between the ages of 7 and 15 will be held at the Vivekananda Monastery in Ganges, August 3 through 10th. The camp combines instruction in the basic teachings of Hinduism, meditation and spiritual life with games, crafts and other camp activities. Anyone wishing to reserve a place for their child should send an application form and comply with all the formalities. For more information, you can contact Swami Chidananda. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. May the Divine Spirit protect us. May He guide us. May He give us strength and right understanding. May love and harmony be with us all. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.